Very good. Well, happy May. Welcome, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. We are back with our great expert on all things HR, Francine Campos, doing our upcoming and amazing workshop on more questions related to HR. So, again, this will be recorded. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and it will be posted on our YouTube channel. That way, you can always revisit it, or if you have other businesses that have same questions, feel free to follow on. So I will pass it on to Francine. She can share her screen and have access to the presentation. If anyone actually wants the PowerPoint, feel free to reach out to us and then we can share it. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gabriela. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, awesome, great. So thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. My name's Francine Campos, and I have been in human resources for a little over 20 years now. Just kind of started as an intern and just kind of worked my way up. So I really got to, experience all the different facets of human resources, which really led me to where I'm at today. And we've had, 3 other sessions really focused on recruiting, training, having difficult conversations. So please refer back to those videos if you have any questions, or feel free to reach out to me as well. So today we're really going to be focusing on organizational culture, engagement, and training. So our agenda really is just going to look like that. What does our company culture look like? Why is it important? The same thing with engagement. How do we get our employees to get engaged with our company to help drive our company forward? And then again, training, which we did touch about on this a little bit in the past, but I think it's really important because it really relates to culture and engagement. And just why is that important? And, looking at the roadmap of what that could look like for your company. And then, of course, we'll leave some time for questions. You could text your questions, but feel free to reach out to me at any time. My email will be shared as well as my cell phone number. Thank you. So we'll jump into it. This is really the exciting part of what human resources professionals just drive to bring support for their company. So we do have, the recruiting, difficult conversations, how to document, things like that. But this is the engagement part. This is the fun part of what human resource professionals really get to focus on. So with culture, I always say culture is the company's personality. That's the best way to say it. Just like we have a personality, our companies as well have one. And and it includes those shared beliefs. What are those values? What are we here for? What are we driving forward? Of course, the workplace environment, big part of that, if not everything, right? What is your company's environment look like? How do people act? What is accepted? What's not accepted? What motivates employees working at that company? So that environment as a whole means so much to culture. Like it really is the culture part. The employee engagement driver, again, we're going to talk about engagement. What can drive your employees to be more engaged with your company to help drive that mission forward? And then, of course, competitive advantage. You have a great company culture, people will want to work for your company. We've had some companies we worked with in the past, a construction company being, for example, difficult culture to work through, just really tough to put in a nutshell. That's the best way to say it. And making these changes, you can now see the type of employees that are applying there or candidates. They want to be a part of that. Before, they kind of steered away from it. And it really is your responsibility to keep your culture. There's a lot of ways to share culture now. We have LinkedIn, of course, glassdoor.com. A lot of company or potential candidates will research that company on Glassdoor, and people are just kind of talk about what their experience is there. And then people make decisions if they want to work there or not, based on a lot of that culture driven data that they have. I think this is a great quote. You'll see my other presentations. I throw little quotes in there that might make sense. So culture eats strategy for breakfast. This is the best way to put it. Your company will not be successful with strategy or any other drivers if your culture is not supporting that and your employees are not driven for that culture. Culture drives everything. If you could have a great employee willing to do anything they want to, or to push that company forward, they don't feel a connection with that culture, they're probably not going to do that. No matter how great they are, the culture really drives and brings that out. So drivers of company culture, and a lot of these shouldn't be a surprise. They really are. Think of yourself. I mean, we're all small business owners now, myself included. What do we want to bring to that environment for our employees? So think about when you worked at a company, what drivers did they put out there for culture, and what did you enjoy? It's not a one, thing fits all, but it definitely will help you look at these opportunities to bring in these culture driven ideas. So, of course, what does leadership look like? And we'll talk about that. How does leadership act? How do they set those priorities? Leadership really does set the tone for the whole culture, all of culture, all your employees. So, really, what are those leadership values? And course, employee empowerment, giving those employees a place to say how they feel, building that trust with them so they feel comfortable to share that information. Of course, of a collaborative environment, that's, will come up in any research that you do to drivers, company culture is creating this collaborative environment, working with your team members. Because you're sharing knowledge, you're sharing information. You have a different experience than I do, so you probably have more insights than I would. So please share that with me, creating that environment where people feel comfortable to do so. And then again, it seems simple, but recognition and in words, acknowledge hard work, acknowledge those achievements. Boasting that morale really doesn't give employees motivation to want to work harder. It really is. Think about a time maybe in school or with a past employer that they were like, great job, Francine, you're doing so great, keep up the good work. I feel so much more motivated to keep up that good work versus it not getting that encouraging recognition. So just think of that, think of your personal experiences. This is very personal. I always say the culture part is your experience there. It's not, the data, the documentation. It's really their experience. So think about your own experience in the past and how that really drove you to want to work there or not. Think of both aspects. Examples of great company culture. I thought this was a great just little slide to add. Again, a lot of these I'm going to talk about a few times, but it's very, very important. That open communication, just encouraging that open dialogue, giving feedback. That's also open communication. You have possibly are having a tough time with one of your employees, to feel free to have that communication, open communication where they tell you what's the struggle and you're also able to tell them. It just makes them feel heard and valued. At the end of the day, that's really what it comes down to. You want to have that open dialogue to be able to feel that. Of course, promoting work-life balance. This has been the topic of discussion since COVID and probably will continue to do so for quite some time. A lot of employees, want to work from home or maybe a hybrid approach. I always tell my clients or employees, life does not stop when you start work. It doesn't end when you leave work. Your life goes on. So sometimes that means we as employers need to be flexible with that. It could be, allowing them to work from home a few times a week. If you have great talents and they're producing, it really doesn't matter where they get that work done. Really think about that, especially with the new, I say millennials, and it's just how things are being done now in the workplace. It's just it's a flexible schedule. It's really, any clients that we talk to or potential candidates, they typically say, is this an in-office job or will you allow me to work from home? Really think about that, because sometimes I think we get stuck. Well, they're not, I can't see them. I don't see them working. And it's really not that. They're producing, and you want to be able to, keep this great individual talent. What do you need to do that? Of course, celebrating diversity and inclusion. I talked about this just a little bit earlier. You have some ideas because your experience of life has been different. Either your background's different, you have a different experience, perspective. You want your employees to feel comfortable to share that. That is really what's going to help your team grow. Someone shared a really great example with me. Coca-Cola has these diversity inclusion breakouts, and they could be on Mexican Americans, African Americans, they're all types of groups. And what they do is anytime that they were going to start working on an ad for a specific culture or even country, they ask for feedback from that group. How should we market to that group? How should, are there any cultural barriers that we should be aware of? The only way you're going to know those things is by celebrating that diversity and inclusion and opening that communication. Encouraging professional growth, giving training opportunities. And we'll talk about training, career advancement. There's documents that we could help you put together that will show the employees. It's called professional improvement plan or professional development plan, depending on how it's being used. And it really does give the employee a sense of where their professional growth is going. Typically is where are we at? Where do I see you? And how can I help you get there? So you're really focusing on that professional growth for the employee, and they in turn will stay there because they see that you're giving that, and it's much more than what you typically would as an employer. And then back to that collaborative culture, it really does go back to open communication, celebrating diversity and inclusion, cross-functional collaboration, any way you could get information from your employees to build that trust and start to give feedback, please do it. And I will be happy to share examples of free ways to do that, or just easy ways to start to open that communication. So, here's kind of a timeline, or, things that affect open communication. So again, leading by example, creating that safe space for them to feel comfortable to do so. Implement feedback mechanisms. We talked about that a little bit on the last webinar. So this could be informal channels, anonymous surveys, having discussions once a month, any way to really open up that feedback. Collaboration, and then celebrate success and learn from our failures. So really, celebrating what went great, but also acknowledging what didn't go great. What didn't go great so we could learn from it and move on. But all of these little steps have such an impact on opening that communication. But on the flip side of that, one of these steps could be missed, and it could really be devastating to this plan of you trying to open communication. And for example, leading by example. The president of the company comes to work maybe unhappy, not engaged, maybe doesn't come to work very often. You could see him, physically bothered when he's there. That's going to set the tone for your culture. And there's probably going to take many steps to recoup that little thing that could be a problem. It's going to piggyback so many other issues. So really stay focused on, talk to your managers or your potential new managers and tell them, you are a manager and this is what I expect from you. This is how I expect you to act. It takes so much time and effort to create culture and to create this open communication, but it's definitely worth it. Leadership role in culture building. We talked about this. It's so important because it really is just as simple as leading by example, right? In our personal life and professional life, leading by example, we look up to people. We have kids looking up to us or other individuals. So leading, really what your role is in that culture building. So you want to model how you want others to look and feel at your company. You want to prioritize transparent communication. You want to recognize positive contributions, and you want to just cultivate continuous learning. And we'll talk again about training, but cultivating that and creating career advancement opportunities for your employees. Being a leader is different than being a manager. I've said that many times in my career. You're leading and people are looking up to you and wanting to support you versus managing, more dictating, this needs to be done. Not sure how you're going to get there, but go ahead and just give it to me at the end. There's two big distinctions in that. And so being a leader, you really have to set yourself on a higher level because others are looking at every move of yours. So let's talk a little bit about promoting that work-life balance. Again, this is a huge discussion. I've gone to webinars, seminars on just work-life balance, what is appropriate for the workplace. could I offer flexible work arrangements? Should I not? Really think about, a position might not be able to work from home. It's just not capable, they're just not capable of doing that. So look at that, look and see if there's something you could provide, or maybe just a little more flexibility. But really talk to your employees of what does this work-life balance mean? Work-life integration, I put that out there. I've worked with other companies that let some of their employees leave for a little bit to go to school or take their kids to a dentist appointment and they come back. It's just that flexibility. Life is still going on. How can we support you during that life changes, really? Wellness programs, you want to take a fitness class together, possibly. We want to reimburse you for that? Just promoting that well-being. Again, that work-life balance, and then workload management. Number one thing I say about work-life balance is, of course, the work, flexible arrangements, the wellness programs, but this is where the meat is, right? So you really want to focus on what does your workload look like? Are you overwhelmed? Do you need to have a conversation with your employer about, this is just too much for me? I can't even think about working from home or leaving to take my child to a dentist appointment because I have so much work. Work with your team or work with your employees to see what that looks like. That workload might be just too much, and taking one task off could really help them in that balance. And understand employees sometimes, more than not, don't feel comfortable saying that. So, open that communication and that trust up so they really do feel comfortable saying, I am just overwhelmed. If this one thing could be taken by someone else, it would help me tremendously. It's really important to have those conversations and that feedback loop so it's not getting to a point where it is at overwhelmed. We've kind of worked it out before that. But a lot of the time, again, people keep that in till they can't anymore. So work with your employees to see what that workload looks like. Again, don't give them a free for all. I always say they still have expectations. They still have to get their job done. But really think about, are they overwhelmed? Is it too much? Because there could be other aspects of that, mistakes, maybe them calling in because they feel a little overwhelmed. It could be a simple conversation that could really help that. So we'll talk about now, building that diverse and inclusive culture. I talked about it before, it really is just ensuring that every single person, that regardless of their background, experience, anything like that, feels included within your culture. Everybody, you want to celebrate that cultural diversity. You want to promote it. You want to establish accountability too. Again, this is not a free for all, happy-go-lucky everything. You want to make sure you're holding them accountable and tracking their progress on their jobs. Encouraging diverse hiring practices, looking for people that are not like you. What is a different experience that someone had that you could bring in to your company to be able to learn from? Resource groups, I talked about that a little bit with the Coca-Cola example, just really being, and that's one example of marketing, but really think about the mentorship part of that, right? Getting a group together and having them connect with each other. It's promoting that networking, but also that mentorship. What can I learn from you? Maybe there's an older individual that has 30, 40 years experience in marketing, and you have a new person coming in that has no experience. Get them together, understand like what the differences are so we could work through them, so we could start to learn from their experience. And then, of course, having that bias training with your employees, it's really important to recognize unconscious bias and how it could lead into certain behaviors or attitudes. The best way to think about it is treat everybody the same, include everybody. That's the best way to put it. I always say if you focus too much on this group, then you're going to leave this group out. So treat everybody the same, include everybody, get their feedback. It doesn't matter if they're the president or a dishwasher. They have the same experience in life, and they could give you information that will probably better yourself and your company. It's really interesting when this really, really works. companies thrive. It's really amazing, especially larger companies. They have these resource groups where they're really focusing on maybe a specific area, but like I said, it's just great shared values. So encouraging performance growth. So again, a lot of this is repetitive, but really think of as culture as a whole, like what would make great culture? Prioritizing work-life balance, leading by example, embracing that diversity, recognizing and rewarding, and continuous improvement. It's literally the same exact list when we're, the drivers of culture. Really look at what these are because they really do focus on the same thing. Engaging culture and training, they really all work together. And if you check these boxes and really work on leading by example and prioritizing the items that we talked about, you really will see the back end of the culture come together and your employees working together more and engaging more and sharing. It all comes together, and it's such a beautiful thing to really see that personality we talk of your company now become an adult, we could say. I did get a few questions the last round on that collaborative culture. So I thought this was really good to add to this presentation. So how do I do that? How do I get people to work together? And taking a step back, right? There's a lot of people that maybe wouldn't be friends outside of work. So now you're challenged with, they might have these personality clashes, but how can I get them to collaborate? Like, how can I get this to work? So, step one, you need to cultivate an environment of trust. If you don't have that trust, you really don't have anything. And think about every relationship in your life, right? It's all based on trust. If you don't have trust, you're going to struggle. So you can't ask people to be open with their experiences in life and just in general if they don't trust you. It's really going to be a tough thing to push through. Provide training on collaboration. That's, there's so much training out there how to properly collaborate, but for me, just work together. There's collaboration stations that I've worked at different companies where people could just sit together, and maybe it's not so much work, but they're just talking and working, and it's just great networking, and it's building that trust. Again, there is training out there, but it really is just try to get your team to work together. Recognize and celebrate team success. Again, you want this to hone in, and you want this to happen over and over. In order for that to happen, recognize and celebrate that. It could be an easy email. Francine and Gabriela worked together on a presentation, and it came out great. She, worked on this part, Francine worked on this part, and what a team, what a great team. And, celebrate that. Establish those roles and responsibilities and accountability. I wouldn't miss that. We've all worked in, group settings in college and high school, and I'm sure one of us took over the group project and all of that. So establish the clear roles and responsibilities. You don't want any overstepping. So if you set that out in the beginning of a project, more than likely it's going to work out great, because you're in charge of this, you're in charge of this, but they're also, I'm going to hold you accountable to this. This project is due this date, so there is no room for confusion. It really is, these are the roles within this collaborative group. And encourage cross-functional collaboration and team building. That's what that is, just constant collaboration. Encourage it from your team. Have you asked this person for their feedback? Did you maybe run this project by this person? It's not questioning it. It's just, there's a different view of things, and maybe they could catch it. Maybe there isn't anything to catch, but did you collaborate them just to make sure? And then promote open communication and knowledge sharing. That could be, creating a shared values folder, and any information or training, you could share it in there. That's also collaborating. It doesn't have to be in person, face to face. It could be, like I said, you're sharing your training and you're going back and forth through email. Like, how can we make this better? That's also collaborative. Collaborative does not mean so much in person. And I stress that because we talk about work from home and hybrid schedules. And that's something that typically comes up. Like, how does my team collaborate? it still could happen. We have Teams, we have Zoom, we have just email. There's so many ways to collaborate. I went to a happy hour during COVID on Zoom. There's ways we can make it work. So if you put the focus and the drive in there, it will pay off. So now we're going to talk about employee engagement. And again, this is a huge driver for culture. If you don't have your employees engaged, you probably don't really have a culture. So we'll talk about engagement and some free, ways to get that engagement going as for small businesses. So employee engagement, it's just the emotional commitment that is tied to a company. It's like, what do they feel their purpose, their investment of their work? Is it a bigger picture? What are they working for? But it also fosters a positive work environment. I say the engagement is a full driver into that. If your employees are engaged, they're gonna want to come to work. They're gonna focus on getting their work done probably faster, doing better work. They're pushing your company forward because they are engaged. And an aspect of that, it drives business success, right? You have a team focus on pushing your company forward. Think you have a fully engaged salesperson that just loves your work and that's going out there to sell, 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 sell. They will sell harder because they're more connected to your organization. They want to contribute. It really is the driver of your business success. I have never heard of a successful business with a horrible culture. To me, one equals the other. I'm sure there has been horrible people that own companies that made a ton of money. I'm sure, but in my aspect and my experience, one does not equal the other, and nor should it. You should always want to provide an engaging culture for your company, because in turn they're working hard. This is the aspect of how you get to give back to your team that has nothing to do with money, has nothing to do with that. You're creating a great work environment for them, and that is just as important. Everybody wants to go to work happy and engaged. We've all been there where we're not that, and we have all experienced that, and we do not want our team to experience that. So keep that in mind. That experience means so much, and it's going to bring these great people to your company as well. So measuring employee engagement, these are just some ideas that I threw, or some topics out there that you will see. If your employee is not engaged, they're going to have a problem with their absenteeism. They're probably going to come in late. They're probably going to come in, they want to leave early. They're probably all the things that come with that. You can look at their records. You'll probably know before looking at those records just by them not being there. Of course, if they leave, voluntary turnover. If they're not getting their job done, not all the time, but maybe there's a disconnect between the culture and them. And I also want to state, like, culture is that personality, right? And not all personalities get along. So you really have to understand, are you going to stick to your culture? And if somebody, has this issue that's not fitting the culture, what are you going to do? Because your culture is everything, right? How do you protect it? So when their productivity goes down, how are you going to address that? That's easy to address on the productivity side, but it's all the culture side too, right? Like, what's happening? Why are you not doing this? There's usually an underlying issue, and then maybe others feel that way, but I just want to, again, it's not the great part of everything. If people don't fit your culture, you have every right to remove them from that culture as well. So when you start to have these issues, of course, address them, but it's not your job to make sure to mold them into your culture. They typically get along with that culture personality or not. And you will see that if they don't fit your culture, it will constantly be a struggle. It just constantly will, because there is no connection there. But again, when that connection's there, these issues don't exist. They are coming to work every day excited. They're not leaving. Their productivity is at high levels. You're not dealing with these type of things. So again, when these issues come up, you will see it clear as day. free ways to engage your workforce. There's so many easy ways. Everything that we've already talked about, foster open communication, recognizing those achievements. It could literally be stopping by and saying, thank you for everything you do. I heard that you did a great job, or you represented us very well at a conference. Recognize that. It does not have to come with money. It just needs to come with commitment, and also, being true and real to what that culture stands for. Professional development, work-life balance, that collaboration. There's so many ways that everyday decisions are made that affect that culture, that engagement. So just, do right by your team, your culture, and a lot of these things will just fall into place on their own. Engagement survey, I really wanted to talk about that because I think that's a great way to where people could start. If you have employees, even if it's tough to get feedback from one employee, but if you have that trust, you probably are getting it anyways. But as you grow and you really want to hone in on that engagement, you could start to offer engagement surveys. They could be once a year, once a quarter, however you see fit. The biggest thing with engagement surveys are you need to make sure you do them properly, right? Think of a survey that you took. I'm sure you've taken an engagement survey and maybe you said, I'm having a horrible time with XYZ, but no one ever brought it back up. All right. You poured your heart out. You gave so much examples, nothing in return. So that's when I say it needs to be done correctly. That's a part of this, right? So you want to, with timing, how should we do this engagement survey? Create your questions. And again, I'd be happy to help you with this. We have some great questions that are short, sweet, to the point, but give you, the information you need. And then you want to analyze what that feedback looks like. What are areas of improvement? What is kind of the consensus with the feedback that we got? And then this is the biggest part, is showing your employees that you thank them for that. You've looked at the feedback, and then the top 5 things that you would like to address till the next go around. And you want to give them updates, right? It could be, we don't have a system in place for payroll and it's creating a lot of issues. We took that feedback, we analyzed it, and think about those impacts, right? Work-life balance, they can't take time off. We're thinking these payroll issues are hitting all of these aspects. So we take that feedback and then we analyze it, and we're like, number one, we need to get a new payroll system. So I would update those employees as often as you can. We're meeting with new payroll providers. We found a new payroll provider. We're rolling out a new system. You want to allow employees to say something, but the biggest part is to do something about it. That's where the continuous improvement cycle comes in. And then it becomes just an easy thing. Imagine you being given the opportunity to be told problems in your company that you probably wouldn't never get, especially as your company grows. Think 100 employees. There's no way that you could speak to every employee. This is a perfect way to get feedback. Of course, you need to build that trust in order for this to even work. But once you get that feedback, you get insights to your company, very great insights of how you can make changes to make your company even better. So it's a great way. It's a great free way. And there's so many not free engagement surveys, but it really doesn't have to be that strenuous. It could be very simple. It really is the feedback and the follow-up after the fact and what you're willing to commit to, again, to drive that culture and to have your employees engaged. This is an example of comparing those strengths. There was a satisfaction survey sent. It was just 0 to 100, right? Like just analyze these 5 questions. So think of, we questioned an accountant, I believe. So what do you believe your work-life balance, in working from home versus not? They thought about 68% of them thought that was okay. Communication and transparency, lots of work to be done there. Professional development seems like they're doing great, 73%, 82% collaboration. They're doing great there. Leadership and vision off a little bit. With this feedback, I would say off the bat, let's take 2 goals. Let's work on communication and transparency. And here's, we'll create goals that work for your company on how to elevate that score. and leadership and vision. You know, is there something off there? What do we need to hone in on that? Is it just they want to know what leadership is doing? Do they want to see where the company's going? Do they just want to know what the goals, revenue goals are? You know, what are we looking in to hone on that? So we would communicate that to the team, you know, thank you for so much for the survey. Taking the survey, you know, based on the results, these are areas for improvement. This is what we're going to do. We will check in with you in the next 90 days, 60 days, whatever you see fit. Like I said, this is a great way to get information. If you have the right culture to begin, so I have to say that if you don't have trust, no one will respond to this survey. A lot of the times, even if trust is built, employees still ask for these surveys to be anonymous. If that's the case, that's totally fine, right? Our goal is to get as much information as we possibly can from them, not per se the person. Of course, if they're willing to share that, great, but it doesn't really need to be part of this. And you're going to get a lot more feedback. You know, we print the surveys, we text them, they're on a QR code, you know, get as much feedback as you can, even if that means extending, you know, the time period to receive feedback. You just want to make sure you're giving them an opportunity to say something. And if you follow up with these surveys, I can guarantee you that each time these surveys come out, it will get better and better and better because your trust is building throughout this. So you're really taking the time to respond, work. Okay, look, they took care of that. I said there was an issue. They took care of that issue. We're moving on to the next issue. And in the background, your company is getting stronger and stronger, probably making more money and more money. You're focusing on that, you know, that opening up that communication and that teamwork. And that's what I mean by things are just getting better in the background by having these engagement, you know, opportunities. But again, focusing on what you're going to do with that information, not just here it is, now really what you're going to do. I think, you know, again, that's a great driver of what that could look like. And if you need any help with that, please reach out. We have some great questions, again, straight to forward. You know, it's open-ended questions sometimes work, but really we want to make it as easy as possible, especially in the beginning. We will get to, you know, other surveys or we could really get in depth, but right now we just want to know, are you engaged? What can we do? If you're not, what can we do to make that better? So now let's talk about training. Training really does have such a huge effect on culture and engagement, right? You are put in your new position, you probably need to be trained. If you're not trained, you're probably going to get very frustrated and disengage and you're going to leave that company. If you are trained properly and given the proper tools, you're going to be probably committed to that company and wanting to be successful in that role. So that's when I say it has huge implications into those other areas. It really, really does. So, you know, again, another quote from Richard Branson. So train people well enough so they can leave, treat them well enough so they don't have to. So this is a great quote, you know, culture and training, you know, train them well enough so they just don't leave because they love their job, but treat them better so they just don't even want to. Even if they're given that opportunity, they just say kind of, no thanks, I'm really enjoying this experience and I don't want to leave this. So the importance of employee training, you know, it really is focusing on equipping them with the knowledge and skills to get their job done. It, of course, improves that employee engagement and job satisfaction. If your company invests in training, and we're not just talking about new hire training, right? It could be a conference, it could be a one-day training or a 1-hour seminar, really just allowing them to broaden their horizon with knowledge. You know, it really does help them feel more confident, but more invested in their work. It enhances productivity and efficiency. You know, the more you train, the better you get at it. It really is, one equals the other. The more you train, less errors, you know, which leads to increased output. It's just, it really does enhance that efficiency. If you see an area of improvement when it comes to training, hone in on that right away because you don't want to continuously create that error. It's just unnecessary, but also frustrating, right? So you want to just lead that and really focus on that training to not better their work, but also better the less chances of errors. And then facilitate growth, career growth and development. I can't say that enough. Really people that have given me the opportunity and have trained me and provided development and career growth for me, I'm forever grateful, because I know I wouldn't be where I am today. And I will be forever grateful to them also in those companies. Professional development and personal development, it really does happen a lot at work, and what your boss and company's willing to do, but it really helps with the retention side. We talked about recruiting, the first webinar I gave, and how hard it is to retain them. You could get them, but how hard it is to retain them. This is where training really could come in and really focus on that. Get them in a training program, get them to learn other aspects of a company. A client I'm working right now with is looking for an estimator. We're going to create some professional development plans for other people in their company to become an estimator in time. Will it take time and investment? Absolutely. But they're putting in the time and investment. We're putting the time and investment, and we'll more than likely have an estimator at the end of the day. So everybody wins. And again, the company is moving forward in the background, and continuously, those revenues and those outputs are continuously increasing. Training and development roadmap. This is, again, just an easy roadmap. This will differ for new hires. It will differ for professional development plans or even improvement plans. So this is just an idea of what it could look like. So we have, we have a mentor program for new hires. A few months later, we send them to a development workshop. And again, remember, a lot of this is free, which is really great nowadays. We could just come up with a list of videos on YouTube. It's really amazing, the opportunities for training out there. Maybe get them in a certification course. Think of opportunities in New Mexico. CNM has a great project management course. Is that something? The state is willing to pay a lot of this training. So again, free training, free development. You could continue to send them to other webinars, again, peer groups, anything like that. I did throw in job shadowing. I thought that was important, especially as your company grows. Say you have two people in accounting. You have an accounts payable person and accounts receivable person. In the beginning, they're probably not going to be 40 hours. If they are, this still will work. You want to cross-train for many reasons, right? To make sure that things are getting done correctly and efficiently, but also just giving them something new to learn. It's exciting when you learn something new, so just job shadowing. And it doesn't have to be one for the other. It could just be like, do you want to shadow me today and just kind of see what I do? It just gives them a different perspective of companies and different titles. And then other trainings, think about trainings that we have to do as employers in New Mexico: sexual harassment training, family medical leave training, depending on the size of our company. So I threw in there diversity and inclusion training modules. Again, those are free trainings we could find online, but that's just giving them something different to think about. Again, this is exciting. We're doing the job training, we're doing those things, but how can we excite them and get them engaged into the company culture? And that is all I have for you today. I don't know if anybody has any questions online. It has been such a pleasure to do these webinars and, culture development training. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out. But yeah, that's kind of what we have today.
Thank you so much, Francine. As always, your presentations are just like so helpful, so much information. And I will open it in case the participants have questions, but just a reminder for everyone that this is a lot to digest and for one individual to work through it. So thankfully, we are so lucky to have Francine offering her services. So if people want to consult with her for 2 hours to think about, how do you implement, all of this that she's been talking about, because it's just so much, please reach out to us because we can connect you with Francine. Sorry, everyone, I have a cold. So that you can have that one-on-one time with her and actually think, okay, this is what we have in our company. What do you think would make sense? I want to implement this training. I want to do this or that. And then you have just you and her. You can ask all the questions you like. So please reach out to us if that is something you're interested in.
Yes.
And for the participants, I don't see any questions. I do see business owners attending, so feel free to add it to the chat. But if there's no questions, I'm hoping that all the businesses will reach out to us because you want to meet with her. Even if you just want to review, hey, these are the, the policies that we have in place. These are the practices, our hiring practices, our firing practices, our trainings. What is your feedback? How can we do better?
Yep.
And that's what Francine is here for.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much, Gabriela.
Yeah, so if there's no other questions, I will then end the webinar. Again, this will be posted, and then we can go from there.
Awesome. Thank you. I hope you all have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great day,
Thank
everyone.
you too.
Bye.